All right, everybody, greetings. Welcome once again to the Rec Poker Podcast and the YouTube video. I'm your host, Steve Fredland, and as always, we are sponsored by Running Aces Racetrack and Casino. This already is episode 115. A couple of quick announcements. We had our Play and Learn on the 26th, and I know at least one of the folks that's on with us tonight, Stacy, was there, and it was 6 hours that felt like an hour and a half. I mean, it just flew by. We had a great time. We're doing those as sort of private sessions. So I'm just collecting a list of folks that are interested in those. So if you're interested, let me know, and I'll let you know when the next time we coordinate one of those deals is. Also, if you want to join our weekly community group chat, 8 to 9:30 p.m. Minnesota time on Monday nights, we do that. It's free of charge. You have to register, but just some great conversations. This week, we're starting to talk a little bit about how do we hand range people? What's that all look like? How do we actually get better at that? So that's something you're welcome to join with. Join with us on that. Also, Derek Smith, just want to give him a shout out. He was doing his big week at Running Aces this week, representing Rec Poker. I know he took second in the first tournament, but he's going to be putting something together, sort of a reflective view on his week at Running Aces. So we're looking forward to that. And finally, the player of the week for Running Aces this week, the top four, Brian Morey, Bernie Kankey, Fia Vu, and Sam Suvanalath. So congratulations to you guys for your Player of the Week status and the extra tournament lammers. Quick shout out, thanks to Stacy Nelson and Chad McBean who are with us tonight to interview the one and only Sara Herring. A few words about Sara before we get into this deal. We've been doing kind of a hardcore strategy hand history thing, and I thought, man, let's take a breath. Let's get somebody in here that's just going to kind of fire us up and be excited. And Sara Herring is one of those people. Met her last summer out in Vegas and just had a great conversation. And, man, I was just fired up at the end of it. She just has this knack of bringing energy into the room. So her and Jeff Platt had a chance to meet them last summer. She is the head of video and podcasting at iBus Media. She manages a global team with more than 150 employees. At least that's the last word I have on the street. So we'll get the skinny if any of that has changed. I enjoyed looking at her LinkedIn profile because she says 10 years ago she was living in Thailand, a rock climbing flower child with a mohawk who thought that 3 shirts was one too many. And she now travels the world with a full makeup kit and her Louis V's, but even in first class, her spirit remains the same. She's also known as Aunt Chardonnay, and if you want the whole story on how that all happened, go back and listen to episode 86. So with that, she's showing our glass right now. If you're just on the podcast, you're missing out on seeing Sara with her glass. But please welcome Sara Herring. Hey, Sara, what's going on?
Thank you so much. That was a glorious introduction. And of course, I actually don't own even one single pair of Louis Vuittons, and Mama still rides in Coach. Don't pretend, but on LinkedIn, you got to bouge it up a little bit.
Nice.
Let's be fancy. If you're trying to hire me, I want you to think I'm flying first class. But also, sidebar, because I did not know about this. What is this learn and play? Is this kind of like a home game where you can learn how to play poker, but in a comfortable space? Because if it is, I'm really on board with that.
You're in? All right. Well, we'll get you about, I don't know, what is it, 2,000 miles north from Texas to get up to Minnesota. But no, it's something we just started. We've been doing this podcast for a while. We started doing a few different training offerings like seminars and that sort of thing. But we did this thing that I'd done in a home game one time where you literally just play the hand as you normally would play. You're not playing for money at all, but you're just playing like you normally would play. And then at the end of the hand, everybody flips over their hand. And then we just talk about, what were you thinking there? Oh, surprised that you didn't raise. Why did you not 3-bet me? What about your bet sizing? All of that kind of stuff.
This is the best thing ever. And this is how I learned to play poker. This is how I fell in love with poker. I had this amazing friend who now runs some games. I probably shouldn't say that. But a friend of mine who used to live in Las Vegas, she sat down with me and she was like, the only way to learn how to play poker is to just play poker. So we did home games or whatever. But then after every hand, we would just say this is why I did this is what was going on. And it's the best, most fun, incredible education you can get with people that you love and feel comfortable with, or that at least you're in an environment where when you all agree to do that, then everyone respects each other. And I'm like, that should take over across the country. I'm on board. Let's start one in Houston.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, it's super fun. I mean, it's super fun, but then it's also you learn so much because you're just exchanging ideas and how you're thinking about things, challenging each other. But the part I like about it, and I think this is kind of the niche of rec poker, is we're trying to learn the game in the context of community. So it's one thing to just have somebody tell you something, and you can learn a lot from that. And some people, that's their best learning style. But there's a lot of us that learn through the interaction side, and we're building relationships. That's the piece that now we have these friendships that are really forming out of this small group of people. So it just works on so many levels.
For sure. And it's one thing, like my least favorite thing ever was, I think when I first moved to Vegas, and I played some of the tournaments at the Aria, and then having players question your play when you're already kind of uncomfortable.
Right.
I think we can all agree is like the worst experience you can have as like a recreational poker player. But when someone that you love and respect and care about is like, why'd you do that? That don't make no sense. Then it's like such a more comfortable environment to be actually questioned, which is the only way to get better, really. But when some jerk off in the 60
Right.
Aria is like, oh, you're an idiot. Like, why'd you do that? It's
Right.
like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go home and never play again. Like creating a space where you can ask questions and question your own self from someone that you respect instead of like in a space where you're going to get defensive and feel uncomfortable it's awesome. I can't wait. I'm coming to Minnesota someday.
All right. We'll come down there. We'll bring it down there. It's going to be the next 2 nights here in Minnesota. It's going to be 26 below actual temperature and 31 below actual temperature.
Dude, I saw there's like a deadly cold front. Deadly.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, they've closed school for the next couple of days, which is pretty rare. But yeah, that's even cold for Minnesota. Like 31 below. I will be outside. I'm probably going to film it, but I will go outside in my shorts and my T-shirt with a big pan of boiling water, and I will throw it up in the air, and it will turn to ice before it hits the ground. It's fascinating. So watch for that.
But you'll do that in your boxers, like just for all of us. Also, I have to finish it. You guys, I have to get it out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go after it.
Finish salad.
Yeah, people on the podcast won't notice it at all.
Good. Please, I'm glad you don't.
So we'll come, don't come up to Minnesota. We'll come down to Texas, and we'll do the play and learn down there. But yeah, it's a great time. And I would recommend it for any of you guys that are out there listening that have a home game, that are willing to be, authentic, willing to be transparent. Because it is kind of hard sometimes where you show what you did and like, I don't know. I really didn't know what to do here. And so you have to kind of put yourself out there, but that is how you learn. So I would challenge you guys, do that out there in your home game.
Do it with each other. It's the most fun. And then you can just bluff each other off like crazy and be like, why'd you do that? Like, because I know you're never calling me there. What's up?
Right. Well, it is an opportunity to try some new things, but I think one of the reasons it really works is you have to pretty much make a commitment among the group that you're going to play how you normally would play. Otherwise, it's, you kind of ruin the integrity of the learning process. So I'm sure everybody wants to hear about that. That was fascinating. But Sarah, what's been going on, man? So we talked a little bit off air here, but the last, I guess, 7 months since we spoke, what's been going on in your world?
Dude, it has been so crazy. Like, it was pretty crazy. For those listeners who have been around for a minute, when I saw you this year in Vegas, I was temporarily spending the summer like half in Vegas and half at my mom's house, who runs a dog hotel. So that was crazy, just because it's as crazy as it sounds. Like, dog hotels are basically like, it's like you live in a kennel and it's bananas. But I had made this decision that in March we should leave Vegas and move to Texas, but we weren't sure where we were going to go. I wanted to buy a house, so we stayed with my father-in-law, like looking for a house. And then, of course, within 1 month, I was in Barcelona and doing poker tournaments. And within 1 month, my mom was like, please, I'm desperate. This summer, I have so many dogs here. Can you guys please just come help me? And it's great money. You can't believe, like, the dog, anyone who wants to know about it, like, come, we'll talk about it. You can't believe it's great money. It's a hard life, but I think it's a beautiful, cool, awesome life if you like dogs. I always see this stuff on Instagram. Like, people are like, I just want the dog life. And it's like, It's not, it's a lot of like throw up and poop and like barking, and it's balanced. It's nuanced. Like, It's great, but it's also really hard. But that was cool and crazy. And then while we were there, my husband got this opportunity to take over a farmer's insurance agency. Basically, he has to spend 1 year training how to run an agency. And so we had to do that in Houston. And then they will, different sleepy insurance offices, as we have been calling them, my husband and I, in our small jokes, will come up, and then we can choose one, hopefully. But in the interim, we had to move pretty swiftly from Colorado back to Waco, where we were living with my father-in-law, and then come right to Houston. Wow. And I had a ton of stops in between that. And Houston is not a place that I ever really wanted to go, or in fact, if you would have said to me, like, what's like the top 5 places you never want to live, Houston would have definitely been on that list. So it was a little bit uncomfortable. And then lots of things happened in the meantime, which were just awful. I did like some really terrible stops. My truck got stolen. My tires exploded. Like just crazy, stupid, random things, like just life things, you know, that happen where when you're already kind of not settled, when they happen, it seems really probably more dramatic than it is. But yeah, so I did not go to the PCA this year because I was literally losing my mind. Like after I did the World Series of Poker Europe, came home for like 3 days, did the Party Poker Caribbean, came home for like 2 days, did 888 Poker London, came home for like 2 days. And I just was like, dude, I need to like move into my apartment and I need to just chill for a little bit. Yeah. And then iBus Media got involved in a lawsuit having to do with some music from like ages ago before I was even in charge of the podcast or videos. And all of this is still really, I don't really understand all of it yet, but that caused a lot of extra work. So all of a sudden it was like, man, I thought I was going to take a vacation, but that didn't end up working out. So it's been crazy. It's been a lot, but I finally feel like I'm settling in.
You're taking a breath now. Okay.
Yes. It's taken a while, but I feel a little bit more like myself finally.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, that's, life stuff, right? I mean, that life stuff, you only see people's exterior world. You don't really know what's going on in the interior. And sometimes that can just be devastating and really hard. And sorry to hear that all of the difficult stuff. Hopefully things will settle down a little bit. What do you have? What's kind of the next trip you have coming up?
So next week-ish, I think February 3rd or 4th, I'm going to London for, it's like a small 888 poker event. It's not like a big, crazy event by any means, but those are some of my favorite to go to. Yeah. I think you guys, I mean, I know Steve and Chad both know for sure. Like, for me, the smaller events are my favorite events to go to. And I can't say 100%, but there's some buzz going around that we might be covering a lot more American tournaments this year. And so those are some of like the smaller ones, maybe like the HBTs, the WSOPCs, like events that I've always wanted to do and be a part of. And I feel like after all this crazy turmoil and stuff this year, like all of a sudden I have this like golden light that I never anticipated. Because yeah, for me, it's like, I love those events. I love the smaller events. I love anything that's like $1,500 and below. I think those are like my people. Those are people that I can relate to. And that's poker that I want to, that's what I love about poker. So cool. I'm excited. And I like these London events. I mean, I'm shocked. You can't believe how many people show up for these kind of events that they, drive in from like 2 hours away, or they take the train from 3 or 4 hours away. And like, those are the people who love poker for sure.
Sweet. Well, I know we've had a chance to talk about this, and I know you and Chad have a history. Chad's actually the one that introduced me to you, and then Stacy and I had a chance to meet you out there. So you guys kind of go way back. But people that haven't been following the Rec Poker podcast maybe haven't heard your story already. When you say you're covering events, you're going to events, why don't you give us kind of the 10,000-foot view of what do you do at these events? So you show up, and then you do what?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, even people who know me, I think, don't understand what we do. And it's the most difficult thing trying to hire people because, theoretically, I think people just see the video content and think, oh, someone must give us a script and someone must, plan the like travel for us or whatever. But really, it's a very small team. And if I could break it down the most basic, it's 50-50. So you have someone who's a producer and a presenter, and then you have someone who's a shooter and an editor. So basically on site, you have only 2 people who are creating 4 to 5 videos per day. And then on the back end side of it, I'm intimately involved in building out contracts, in booking travel, booking teams. Really, I'm the only full-time person on the video and podcast team at iBus Media. So it's a lot of managing and maintaining freelancers and trying to hopefully find and keep people who are good and skilled. But yeah, it's like I think people think we just like, oh, it's so easy and it's no big deal. But really,
that looks fun. That looks awesome.
Hard job. Yeah. It'd be
like having a dog. like having
When
a
you
dog
say-
hotel.
If you say travel the world, people are like, wow, that sounds like very Angelina Jolie, but like it's not. Like, I can promise you that it is not. But it's great because the passion and the drive of the people who are there is, I think, the thing that really motivates us and keeps us going. And that's part of why when we're at these smaller events, it's so refreshing. There's definitely times where we go to these bigger events where there are other people who have been traveling for ages and they're just trying to make money. And I get that and I appreciate that and I respect that, but it definitely changes the vibe where it's like when you're haggard and you're tired and you're working like 12, 15, 16-hour days, when you get those people that are like so excited to be there and so excited to be covered, that's, I think, really what keeps us going.
And I think when we talked last time, I mean, this is like true reporting in the sense of nobody's saying, hey, here's all the stories that are out here, Sarah. It sounds like, we talked about the World Series. You were out there looking for those stories. I mean, you're kind of waiting for somebody to tell you something about somebody who got in through a free satellite, or, all of a sudden John Hesp appears out of nowhere, or, that's right. You're kind of digging for where are these golden stories within the mass of humanity that's participating in these tournaments.
And you just have to be out there. Like, that's what's so crazy is sometimes when I'm trying to explain what I do, like when I'm at home, it's, I'm like, okay, it's budgets and it's, the
logistics,
basic stuff I can explain, staffing, these things I can explain what I do. But when you talk about what you do when you're on an event and why I can't do anything else when I'm at an event, people are always like, well, why can't you get that done? Like, why can't we have that meeting? Why can't we shoot that podcast? Because like, basically you just have to be walking around. You just have to be in it because you're going to be in it. And then like that guy you met at table, 5 seat 6 is going to be like, oh, hey, come over here. I got to tell you this thing. Or, you go to the secondary room where the cash games are going on and you see some dude, who's like, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this thing about this guy. But it's like, basically you just have to be constantly circling around and cycling around. And then of course, like refreshing the blog, looking at the blog, getting on the Twitter. Honestly, it's having been in other industries, I have to say the Twitter sphere specifically, it's, I think, mostly for politics and poker. It's like, there's so many people that I've met that are like relatively new to say poker media or even just poker. Like Marley Cadero, I had her on the podcast like a month ago, and she's like, oh, I'm like, I don't really use poker. I'm big in poker, but I don't really use Twitter. And I was like, dude, if you're going to be big in poker, you have to use Twitter. Like, yeah. Twitter is you're going to find tons of stuff. You're going to see who lost their stack, that like stuff hasn't been, adjusted yet in the blog. And it's really just it is like, you really are a journalist. I mean, we're not covering war or anything. Right. It's not that important.
Well, some people might call it war the way that they describe their bad beats. You might think they just lost a leg in a war, but
yes. And when you are the one, and I've had this experience of following, like I remember Christy Arnett was just like super, super deep. What was she like? So I can't even remember what the tournament was, like WPG, something, whatever it was. But like my girl was like deep in an event, and I'm just like refresh. Right,
like,
totally. What's with the chip counts? This stuff is messed up. And so when you're on the flip side of it, you realize, dude, this is news and it's super important. And this is the only outlet a lot of people are going to have. And half the times, even the live streams don't have the numbers right. And, and half the time the live streams, it's just one table and you're not going to get info on what's going on the outer 3 tables that are still having massive pay jumps. And so I like to think it's cool. It's kind of important to like some people.
Well, it is. I mean, that's, it's a niche thing. I mean, you're doing a great service for those of us who are super interested in poker. Now, if you're not interested in poker, whatever, but it'd be like, okay, if you covered cornhole, I'd be like, who cares about cornhole? But people that are really into cornhole want somebody that's there covering it. So, for those of us who are into poker, thank you for the service that you're giving us because it's huge. Now, I have a ton of other questions, but I want to make sure, I give a chance for Chad or Stacy if any of you guys have any questions or comments for Sarah?
I'm just trying to imagine who's the Sarah of cornhole. I know there is one. Like, I want to know.
You could be that person. I mean, it sounds like you really have nothing going on. Yes. You could go start covering cornhole.
Honestly, like, this is not a bad idea. I don't know if it's cornhole, but I'm sure there's some other like random niches that I could kind of like weasel my way into.
You might have to upgrade to like Aunt Vodka or something.
Anti like PBR. Yeah.
Yeah. Chad, did you have something?
Well, I just know from from firsthand when a couple years ago, sitting in a deathly cold warehouse watching 20 hours of poker being played in a cube, sitting beside Auntie Chardonnay as she's bundled up in her blanket.
And my slippers, all the pictures
slippers,
from that.
Yep.
We have a story forming here.
I'm like, y'all, if you were gonna put the photos like all over the internet, you could have told me to put my shoes back on. Come on.
But yeah, no, it is hard work because you always have to be paying attention, and not only to what the action's going on, to the people around you, because you never know who has the story or what other players are talking about what. And in Twitter, you can see just this week, there's some players just say one type of term and other players just go off. And that's been going on with some highly known players recently. So you got to stay on Twitter. You got to stay everywhere and keep your eyes open and your ears open and everything. And I'm sure, Sarah, with all your events that you have to cover, you have to have people ready in all over the world, really. So how does someone become one of those people to work with you all around the world? That's my question.
I mean, for sure, like it's super key. And I will say, and I'm sure I'm pretty sure I shouldn't be saying stuff like this, but when I was just at the Party Poker in the Caribbean, they didn't bring very many live reporters from our, so we basically get subcontracted out by all these other companies, right? So Poker News goes to cover tours, and those tours like pay for our team to come cover the tour. But so they wanted like a massively reduced team to just push everyone to the live stream, I think was their ultimate goal. And then they wanted me on the live stream, which I was like, cool, that'll be fun. Like I can be, like ready for whatever and let's just get it. But then like midway through the first day, I realized I don't have the information, right? Because the live stream is 30 minutes delay. And then if I don't have people who are on the floor actually like blogging the tournament to give me the information, so they're just like, okay, go do a bust out. And then it's like my face and me. And I'm like, hello, who are you? And what happened? And then,
Hey,
I
what's
look
going on?
yeah. And I look like such a Dumbo. Like, I don't know. Did he make a great play? Did he make a terrible play? Like, did he get coolered? What happened? Did he have a small stack to begin with in the hand? Or it was just so many things. And then they're like, just like, you're like a professional. You can just like ask the questions. And I was like, no, because I am a professional. I can tell you that you need some information to ask questions. Otherwise, then you just become the person who says, how does it feel to get busted out of a tournament?
Boy, that's gotta suck, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's terrible. But to answer, Chad, how does one become this type of person? The live reporters are run by Yori in pokernews.com, and we need people all over the world. And if you ever want to be a live reporter, I think the easiest thing would be to like just slide into the DMs of me or Poker News or whomever, or there's like infinite, I'm pretty sure there's like I know there's a contact us on the Poker News page where you can like send a resume, send a writing sample. And actually for me, for example, I don't hire the live reporters. I hire mostly presenter producers and also shooter editors. And I am desperately looking for a shooter editor in the Houston area. I've got a gig on Friday, the Thirst Lounge. So Bill Perkins is putting together like 10 hosts and some other people for the Thirst Lounge. And he's doing an event on Friday in Houston, which I need a shooter for. And basically what always happens is anytime I find a shooter, then, you freelance this gig here with me in Houston. And then next thing you know, we're in Vegas all summer, or we're, going to Barcelona or whatever it is. So if you're listening and you know someone who lives in the Houston area, which it turns out is a very large area, who can shoot video and edit video, hit me up. Slide into my DMs. I'm ready for it. I need it.
And Chad, if you know somebody, Sarah was saying off air that she's got a $10,000 referral fee. So feel free. Just kidding, people.
I have you can't imagine. It's just like a part of my budget.
Unlimited budget, right? Isn't that kind of how you guys roll?
Yeah. As we know, like I'm always like private jets.
I know. Yeah. First class, Louis V's. I mean, we already kind of told the story a little bit.
I don't even know. Like apparently there's like a thing about shoes that have red on the bottom. Like, I don't know. I don't have it yet, but like.
Stacey, did you have something there?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you weren't playing in the main event. You're not that caliber of player. I think you remember you referring that to us.
Mm-hmm. Also, we can't
learn enough.
It's like illegal.
Gotcha.
They
which is
can't.
part of why I lose a lot of my staff too. So like Jeff Platt, who you guys who you guys met last year,
Yep.
he's not going to be doing video with me this summer because he can't play.
Okay.
If he does video with me, which
So where did you play, or how did you learn enough to know to ask what questions to ask so you sound and you could dig deeper? How did you find that balance of how to play enough to really dig in and get to a good story?
Okay, so this is like a two-parter because actually when I very first fell in love with poker, I was living on Fremont and Las Vegas Boulevard. So like full on Binions, Golden Nugget. It turned into the D. Before that, I think it was the Fitzgerald. Yeah, the Fitz. Basically, I was a total downtown hood rat. And my husband and I were like, in hindsight, when I think about it, it cracks me up. But we would go like 4 nights a week and play these like $60 tournaments, 100. Like on Saturdays, they had one at the Nugget and also one at Binions where it was like a guarantee of $5K, I think, or something. It was like $5K guarantee, but you would pay $100. Yeah, and so I was basically playing like 4 or 5 days a week at least at these really low stakes, whatever kind of tournaments. And then I became really crazy about this. There was this one tournament at the Fitz, which is nothing. I think, honestly, every night we would get like 3 tables. But it became kind of like a home game, really. Like we knew each other really well. Yep. It's crazy. Like you start to just know everybody, you know, the waitresses. I fell totally in love with the poker room director there. He was just such a wonderful person. And so my husband and I started, it was like a $40 buy-in with like a $20 add-on or something. So I was like, okay, budget wise, even if I want to play this tournament every single night, if it's $60, like I think I can just consider it an investment, you know, in my future or whatever. And so I played that most days for 2 years. And they had on Wednesdays, it was a $20 buy-in, but they were training dealers for Omaha. So like we got to learn Omaha a little bit better and how to talk about that. But if I'm honest with you, even then I loved poker. I enjoyed playing poker so much, but I was so uncomfortable talking about poker, so uncomfortable. And Christy Arnett was like my best friend and she was, you know, the strategy girl. And so I just always was like, well, I'm just never going to be that. So I'm not even going to try. I'm just always going to pretend like I know nothing about poker and don't care about poker because I thought that was kind of a safe route to go. And I would say that after Christy left, maybe I always have been crazy about watching content, mostly because when I'm going to interview someone, I think it's really important to see the kind of content and stuff that they're putting out there and what are they saying and what are they talking about. And reading the blogs, of course, is something I just have to do to cover tournaments appropriately. And so it just sort of started to happen naturally where the language started to make more sense. And after listening to lots of people explain things, I was listening to a bunch of old podcasts as a result of this lawsuit I brought up earlier. And I heard myself doing some strategy interviews maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And it was interesting because you could see that I was like trying some things or asking some things. And I think I must have gotten bad feedback or people must have said nasty things on YouTube or something after that, because I think I really, really shied away from it after that. But then I could see in the last couple of years, having, for example, worked with the live stream team and worked with some other people who really don't know anything about poker, try to say things where I'm just like, oh, I'm not going to ask that. That's a terrible question. Or like, that's embarrassing for you to ask me to ask that. And so I by no means feel comfortable, you know, talking next level strategy or anything, but I do feel much more comfortable now and much more at home in a space to ask questions like, you know, to ask questions about value and understanding a little bit about equity and ranges and things where I think, I just feel a lot better about it now than I used to. And actually I had a job opportunity come up a couple months ago in the esports world, which would have paid me quite a bit more, which I thought about because I thought that's interesting. But then I thought, it's taken me almost
Right, all the
10
time.
years to understand like where I am in poker. And I was like, if I took this job, I would be just totally starting over. And I'm I think grateful and proud of where I've gotten in this space. And I'm like, really don't want to start over again.
Well, it's kind of fun. You're in one of those roles that, so many things have been documented for many, many years now. So you can actually look back and see the progress that you've made. I think sometimes whether it's poker playing or whether it's just life or whatever, people don't have that opportunity. You kind of forget how far you've come in life or in poker or in whatever, but you have that opportunity, which could be scary as well. But to actually look back at those interviews or those discussions that you've had and say, wow, I really didn't know anything. And at the time, I actually thought I knew some things.
Yes, it's so good. And it's also so bad.
Right.
Like I think about our poor children, like God bless you, because there's just so many periods of my life that thank you, Jesus, do not exist.
There's no pictures. There's no video, right? Yeah, especially when you're our age, it's like, I'm like, I'm talking to Stacy and I, once you're Stacy and I's age, it's like, wow, the first 25 years, there wasn't any documentation of anything.
Yes, which is like kind of a bummer, but it's also kind of like, is it so bad?
Well, so we have about 10 minutes left, man. I have a million questions, but there's one I really wanted to get to, and there's a couple I really wanted to get to. We'll see if that happens or not. But one is, last time we talked quite a bit about all the different personalities that you've had a chance to interview or actually dig a little bit deeper and get a more of a relationship with. I'm kind of curious, like if you had, 2 hours available and all the poker personalities available to you, like who would you want to spend like 2 hours with, just chatting about, wouldn't have to be poker, just chatting about life or just hanging out with? Like who are those, one or two personalities that have just stuck with you as, man, those are people that I'd love to just get to know better or spend some time with?
Oh man, that's like
way deep,
really hard, because I am being 100% genuine when I tell you that poker players for me are so surprising so often. So often I go into interviews like nervous to ask someone or unsure, and I come out of it like, I think my camera guy makes fun of me sometimes because just so often I'm like, wasn't he wonderful? Like, wasn't that so
good,
fascinating? And I think the funny thing about poker players, especially, is I was like crazy about wanting to be like popular and stuff in high school. And that's what I did. And that's what I aimed for. And so I think I just missed a lot of a certain type of crowd. And so for me, I just always think like, oh, they're going to be like probably uncomfortable, or they're not going to know what to say, or I'm going to make them freaked out or something. Like you just create some weird divides like at a very young age. That
like accountants and actuaries, right, Chad?
Hey, listen,
we never had a chance
with that insurance game now, dude. I'm all about that actuary life.
We never had a chance with the Sara Herrings in our high school.
But then it's so crazy because you realize some of the relationships that I mean, you probably realize it in the moment, but you realize that like lots of the relationships that you have are shallow, and somehow you start to just open all of these doors of, there's just infinitely fascinating people in the world. I think there's just so many people that are so fascinating. I could think of so many in so many different ways. Yeah. I could tell you that, actually, for example, so I met Marley Cadero at a girls' night that Chrissy Arnett invited me to, and there was just tons of awesome women, but I was just totally put off by the whole thing because it was just so like, women hear us roar, and let's like, I don't know, there was just something about it that I think I behaved and reacted in a way that I just didn't work too hard, I guess, to nurture those friendships. But then having her on the podcast this month, I was like, wow, I'm super interested in what you're doing, and I think you're super cool, and I would definitely love to just have drinks and hang out with her. And on the completely other end of the spectrum, there's been so many people there was a guy who just won the high roller at the 888 in London in December, who was just the coolest, nicest, chillest guy, where I was just like, yeah, we could like definitely go out with your family and hang out. And then there's other people like the most of the guys, for example, in Solve for Why, like Matt Berkey is someone that every time I talk to Matt Berkey, I'm just blown away. And then
Jordan Young and that whole crew. Christian Sale.
And they're just really smart, and they really care. It's like the Jason Koons, like people who really are just they're into like biohacking and they just want to be the best people they can be. And then conversely, like Tony Burns, for example, who is the poker director for the Seminole Hard Rock in Florida. The Seminole Hard Rock has like a recurring podcast sponsorship on the Poker News podcast. So we do a lot of video interviews, and you would think that it's just like this is like, we have a sponsorship, so this is what we do. But I swear, every time I talk to him, we end up just so deep in conversation about our families and our lives. And
cool.
I don't know, I guess I'm just on all ends of the spectrum. I think poker has infinitely interesting people to connect with. And it's actually one of my biggest problems is, for example, going to the World Series. I say, like, I can't do anything else. And it's because you just walk down the hallway and every 10 seconds you're getting into some engaging, interesting conversation. And
well, some of that
really,
comes from
it's probably not just poker. It's just like human beings are. Really,
well, right, and I think some of that comes from you because I think your personality is you're a reporter, so you're interested in people's stories. You're very personable. I think you want to get to know people more than a surface level. So I think there's kind of that your personality. You're going to find great stories when your personality is looking for great stories. And I know last time we chatted, I was asking you, what do you think the great poker players have in common? And I think we wrestled with that for a while, going back and forth because you just couldn't put your finger on it. And I loved the dialogue, and I went back and re-listened to that. And ultimately, you just said, I think they're very self-aware, which I thought was a very interesting conclusion to be like, because they're, poker players are vast spectrum of health and, social, butterflyness and all these things. But I think that's where you came back was they're self-aware. They know who they are, the great ones. For sure.
The great ones. And to be able to, I think all of us struggle, myself very much included, with recognizing your flaws is one thing, but actualizing the change that needs to be made to become, your better self or some version of yourself, saying, I know I shouldn't be 3-betting every time in this spot, but I just want to, or whatever it is, but actually doing the thing that is not your nature, but is your sort of higher self is, I think the really great poker players generally do that.
I have one more question for you, then we're going to have to cut it pretty short, but if Chad or Stacy have anything they want to ask, time just flies by with you for sure. But
I know, I didn't even finish a wine.
I know, you have to at least
get it.
You should have had have some logo on there, get some sponsorship for the video for, whatever you're drinking there. But I kind of want to ask you a little bit, and I know this could be a whole separate thing, but we just have a couple of minutes, like just from a high level perspective, both you as a player, the conversations that you've had with others, what can we do as a recreational poker community to help increase the gender diversity in poker? I know I looked at the stats recently, and online, like 25% of the online players are female, and then it kind of keeps going down and down and down. Eventually, to the main event, I think is around 2 or 3% that are females, and it's kind of everything in between. And obviously, you see it at the local casinos everywhere. Should we be concerned? Should we be driving it? But primarily, what I think we should. I mean, I think to grow the game, but also I think it's just better in everything to have diversity. I'm just curious your perspective on what can we do as recreational players, as the Rec Poker podcast, as Rec Poker Nation community? What can we do to help grow the game and improve diversity?
I mean, to me, the best thing is to work locally, right? So if you have a friend who you work with who doesn't know how to play poker, to bring her to your poker game or to explain, because I can say for sure for my own self, I just did not understand anything about poker. And once I just even understood small nuances, I think it's extremely attractive to women, mostly because there's such a psychological element. And this is what is the most attractive thing for most women, I think. So it's like inviting them to the game, bringing them into the game, making them feel comfortable. And it's so funny because I would say 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said more women will bring more women. But actually, I totally don't think that now. I actually think sometimes like women can be the meanest and most aggressive at other women, and the men, you know, you're never going to be able to stop or change or control, you know, everybody at the poker table. So this like, oh, let's just like make it happier or better for them. It's like, okay, like we, you know, we're not the boss of the universe. We're not going to change all the games. So the thing is like, the only thing you can do is like instill the love of the game in someone else. And I also would say I've looked at the stats and I've made for my own KPIs and my own goals multiple times on both podcast and video to increase the female audience for us. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think that there's so many things that are factors that are included that people don't consider. For example, having children is a gigantic thing that separates men and women, right? Like men have kids too. I get that, but it's like birthing children for women, I think, is a massive part of their role and responsibility, and motherhood is a ginormous task to take on.
Yeah.
And so I think there's lots of periods of women's life where they're like playing regular poker is just less accessible online. Like getting a babysitter and then going to, you know, the casino is just, it's like a lot. So I think I've reflected on my own goals of getting more women in and just realized that, you know, I'm not the boss of that probably, and I can't change it. But the only thing you can do is like in these very small spaces, the people that you do know, like the one girlfriend that I had that made me really like poker. Imagine now, like maybe that I've affected 2 or 3 other lives, and then you can get this exponential growth potentially. But that it's, you know, I don't think like if you're super nice at the table, like it's not going to save someone else from hitting on some girl or something. Like if you can't take it, like it's probably not going to be the sport for you. But those things, like you're saying, learn together, do home games where you can talk together and make them feel safe and make them feel comfortable. Like that's the best thing you can do.
Okay, good. Chad or Stacy, anything else for Sara?
Are we going to see you out in World Series this summer? You going to be out there covering everything?
Yes. And actually, I would throw this out to your guys' audience. So I've been working a lot on the lawsuit, and that's really consumed my mind for the last 2 months. But my next project I'm looking at is working on acquiring a budget for the World Series. And in order to determine that budget, I'm trying to figure out a content plan and what we're looking for. And so we've got quite a few ideas spiraling around about what we want to do and what we think people want to see. But if your audience out there has ideas, if you want to see more news, if you want to see more fun stuff, if you want to see more sit downs, more behind the scenes, more whatever it is that you're looking for, I'm looking to build a content plan in the next month that hopefully can be what people are looking for. And I mean, we're just always trying stuff, but getting real feedback from people who actually watch the content is super helpful.
And I'm happy to collect that. If you guys want to send stuff to me, I'll send it to Sara. But how could they do that directly, Sara? What's the best way to provide that kind of input?
You can slide into my DMs. My DMs are open on the Twitter.
On Twitter, Auntie Chardonnay.
Yes, AUNTY Chardonnay. Or you can also just send me an email. It's Sarah, SARAH, @pokernews.com. Very simple.
Okay.
And if you know someone in Houston who's a shooter editor,
right.
Get at me.
We've covered that. at me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sara, why don't you take a couple minutes here if you want and just kind of share how else, I mean, you shared some of it, but how can people connect with you? What should they be paying attention to if they're not plugged into the Poker News or some of the other things that you're doing? What should every recreational player be following, be listening to, be watching for that you're involved with?
Oh my gosh, nothing.
Nothing.
I'm like
okay.
The worst. So I'm on the Twitter, Auntie Chardonnay, and that is like every time I do the podcast, I tweet that out. I'm on the Instagram, Auntie Chardonnay, but I'm pretty terrible at posting. I'm just not that great on social media. But if you want to know what's going on in the poker world, I think Poker News is a great resource.
Yep.
Of course. And
of course.
Yeah, I think if you're interested in poker and you're looking to find what's going on in poker. I think and I hope that we're going to be covering a lot more stuff this year in the US, which is, so for me, for my podcast, it's primarily US based. My YouTube audience is primarily US based. And it's been really a bummer and a struggle because we're just not covering most of the US based tournaments because, there's no like affiliate deals and all that. But I think we're making a shift this year and I'm super excited about that. And I would just love to see more people, more feedback. Honestly, you can find all of my video content on Poker News at the Poker News YouTube page, which is just pokernews.com spelled out, Poker News DOT. But I mean, obviously everyone understands search engines. But I think we're going to be coming up with a ton of new stuff on the YouTube page, hopefully this year, which will be American audiences will be able to connect more to it, and it will be like put out in time zones that they're interested in. And I hope that also the WSOP coverage this year will be able to do. We've been very limited in our budget the last few years of the World Series, and it's been really disappointing for me. So I think we're going to be able to do a lot more long form content and stuff that we haven't been able to do before. So just be vocal, be out there, tell me what you want, and then I can take those things and give them to the people who have money and say, look, this is what the people want. Help us give the people what they want, Right. I think that's part of the biggest problem is like, our most vocal audience is just wanting to talk about like, anal or whatever, like weird stuff they talk about in the YouTube comments or just being mad about things. Like the really constructive feedback is what we could take and give to the people who have.
Cool. Well, we almost ended the podcast on time. We almost did. 30 seconds earlier, we could have avoided that.
But I had to get in that anal.
I know, exactly. Thanks a lot.
Anal comment before we quit.
All right. Well, we do have to wrap it up there. Sarah, I mean, thanks so much. Thanks for coming on the show. Normally we're talking strategy, hand history. This is just kind of fun to just catch up with you and hear how life is for you and what's going on behind the scenes. So thanks for your time on that deal. Thanks to Chad and Stacy for joining us tonight. Thanks to Running Aces for continuing to be our sponsor. Those of you on the podcast can't see Sarah blowing kisses to the audience. So get out there, check out the YouTube video, folks. I know it's pretty new for all you Rec Poker podcast listeners, but there is the video version, and you're going to miss out on Sarah drinking wine and blowing kisses. So go check that out. Go to recpokertraining.com for information on everything else we have going on out there. Sign up for the newsletter to keep informed on things like the play and learn, all that jazz. Like us, rate us, review us, all that stuff. If you want to patch, let me know. But until next week, good luck on the felt, and maybe I'll let Sarah give the parting words as we sign off.
Deuces.
All right. Take care.